students, welcome in the today's lecture of the surgery. The today's lecture of the surgery will be on the Volkmann's ischemic contraction. Volkmann's ischemic contraction is also called Volkmann's ischemic necrosis. So what about the Volkmann's ischemic contraction? The Volkmann's ischemic contraction is a permanent shortening. It is a permanent shortening of the muscles, especially of the forearm. What? The Volkmann's ischemic contraction is the permanent shortening of the muscles, especially of the forearm, and it usually resulted from the injury to the vessels or to the injury also there, and which will be result into or give rise the claw-like deformity. Claw-like or deformity is of the fingers, hands, and the wrist. It's most commonly occurring in the forearm, but similar condition can be occur in the foot also there, when the injury to the leg, isn't it? So we understood what by the Volkmann's ischemic contraction. It is a permanent shortening of the muscles. You can say shortening and stiffening also there, where it cannot be moved. It not remains flexible, or movements are not possible, and the deformity like the claw hand, isn't it? Claw-like deformity is there, isn't it? And this denotes, means why did it occur? After the injury, if there is a fibrosis of the flexor muscles, fibrosis of the flexor muscle occurs, and that portion of muscles where the fibrosis gets occurs or damage gets occurs doesn't get relaxed, they remains contracted, isn't it? And they will not allow the movements of the wrist, and that is due to claw hand, which is called as a Volkmann's ischemic contraction. The causes, what are the causes are there? See, the common cause, or commonly this Volkmann's contracture occurs from, or Volkmann's ischemic necrosis occurs from the what? The impaired blood flow. Impaired blood flow. What are the causes of injuries there? Impaired blood flow. That's called ischemia. Means decreased blood supply to the muscles after the injury. Isn't it? And of the forearm. And this occurs when there is increased pressure due to swelling. Increased pressure due to swelling where? At the site of the injury. It is called as a compartment syndrome. Compartment syndrome. As you seen in the case of the supracondylar fracture of the humerus, it is a common complication compartment syndrome. What happens after the injury? And you will do the plaster or any bandage, splint place bandage, and if the part which is covered in the plaster or the bandage, it will get swollen. After swelling, it causes what? The increased pressure inside, because there is no space for the swelling. From above the bandage or the splint, and sometimes swelling also itself it causes the pressure over the vessels. They are getting due to increased pressure at the site of the swelling, that will be exert the pressure on the blood vessels, or especially artery which supply to these flexor muscles, and this flexor undergoes the ischemic necrosis, and that is the fibrosis, and due to that there is a shortening is there. You are getting? So the condition that cause the increased pressure are there. What are the conditions that it will cause the increased pressure or the compartment syndrome? These are the number one, the forearm fracture, means fracture of the bones of the forearm, and the supracondylar fracture of the humerus. First one was the fractures of the bone of the forearm, and second is a fracture of the humerus. Second, animal bites. Animal bites, like the snake bites or poisonous animal bite, that will cause in the. Then in case of the burns, commonly the contraction also occurs the burns. Then injury to the blood vessels to the forearm. Injury to the blood vessels of the forearm. That is either the brachial artery or the ulnar artery, this may get injured and they will diminish blood supply. Excessive exercise, even excessive exercise also causes the contraction. You do the excessive exercise, it causes more stretching of the muscles and it causes injury to that one and result into fibrosis of that muscle is there. Then the surgery of the forearm. For any purpose, if the surgery of the forearm is done, it will damage the flexor muscles and causing the fibrosis. And the last one is the certain injections which are taken into the forearm, drugs. So that will also cause in that. Among these the causes, all these causes are there. The 7 causes. The first one and the fourth one. The first one, which is the forearm fracture or fracture of the bones of the forearm and the supraorbital fracture, and the fourth one is that injury to the blood vessels or to blood vessels of the forearm are the common causes. So do you understand? So mainly underlying cause is that increase the pressure at the site of injury which resulted into the compartment syndrome, and it is swelling. There is no space for the swelling to increase. Ultimately, it exerts pressure on the inner side on the vessels are there, which causes the occlusion of the vessels, isn't it? But apart from that, the thrombosis of the vessels, embolism of the arteries, that will also causes the Workman's ischemic contraction. That will be discussed in the nature of the injury of the arteries are there. So fractures we have already discussed there. Then the types of the arterial damage or its pathology. What kind of damage will be there? It either may be the primary or the secondary. Primary, when at the time of the injury, and it is related from injury at the time of the incident there. Here, the primary where the arterial injury, the primary one where the arterial injury is evident when the patient is first seen, and the nature of the injury may be as follows. Number one, the artery may be torn across or lacerated. Artery may be torn case, either lacerated at the time of fracture. At the time of this fracture may be fragments of the bone which gets fractured may lacerate or torn the artery. Either by the object which is caused the injury or the sharp end of the fracture fragments. If any injury penetrating causing the laceration of the vessels of the supply to the forearm or to the fracture. So that's why it's most commonly occurring the fracture. Then the artery may get contused so that there is a thrombosis in the lumen, resulting in the occlusion of the artery. If any contusion to the vessel, that may cause thrombosis, formation lumen of the artery, and if the thrombosis occurs in the lumen of the artery, it will cause obstruction to the blood flow, which results in impaired blood supply and result to the Workman's ischemic contraction. Then there may be a kinkler in between the fracture fragments. The artery may be gets impinged or the kinkler. Kinkling of the artery may occur in between the two fracture fragments, and this will get compressed by that and will cause impaired blood flow. Then artery may simply go to the spasms because of the irritation. Due to some irritations, even injury or either by the chemical, artery undergoes the spasms. So when artery undergoes the spasms, so it diminishes the lumen, decreases the lumen, and what happens? Impaired blood supply to the distal part, resulting to the Workman's ischemic contraction. So that is the primary. Then we will see the secondary. Secondary means what? Which not occurs at the time of the injury, which occurs later. It occurs mostly in case of the fracture for secondary. So what secondary is that? When the arterial injury is evident after the fracture has been offended, that is manipulated and or plastered or the bandaged, the cause of the arterial impairment in these cases may be number one, injury to the artery. Injury to the artery due to forceful manipulation, most commonly in a spasms. So, a forceful manipulation after the fracture. The fracture is, we are going to reduce the fracture manually by manipulation. This forceful manipulation will causes the damage to the artery, or most commonly spasms. They said the position of the limb. Example, exercise flexion of the elbow in supracondylar fracture occluding the brachial artery. See, the excessive of flexion of the elbow, where in case of supracondylar you immobilize, or during the reduction, if you excessively flex the elbow, it will cause what? Compression of the brachial artery, isn't it? Third, tight plaster or bandage. If you apply the tight plaster or bandage, either in case of what? The supracondylar fractures or the fractures of the upper part or shaft of the bones of the forearm. This bandage, tight bandage or tight plaster will exert the pressure or compresses, or it doesn't allow to increase the swelling, so that it increase the pressure inside it, which compresses the vessels, causing the occlusion of the vessels result into the impaired blood supply, and that will result into the Volkmann's contraction. Isn't it? The next, the clinical features. The clinical features, they are variable with the development of the contracture. With the development of the contracture, and the developmental stages are the first one in the stage of the ischemia, means as soon as there is a decreased blood supply, and due to this impaired blood supply, there will be the manifestations. These are severe pain in the forearm and the hand. Severe pain in the forearm and the hand, isn't it? Even after the fracture has been reduced and the immobilized. If pain persists on that. Then painful movements of the fingers. As we advise in case of the Pulley's fracture, even in supracondylar fracture of the humerus, you have to advise the patient to do the exercise of the fingers are there. When the patient is going there, there is a painful movements of the finger. The diminishes the sensation in the finger. Then absence of nail bed return. If nail doesn't grow, that also indicates the impairment of the blood supply there. Means there is a ischemia is there. Then next one is a altered color of the fingers. First red, then blue, and then the blackish. Altered color of the fingers. So these are the what? The clinical features or the signs and symptoms which are present during the ischemic condition. Means as soon or early stage when there is impaired blood supply, and this all the signs and symptoms are clinical features due to the impaired blood supply, ischemia. Next, in the developing stage, means after the impairment of the blood supply, the muscle undergoing the damage or necrosis, isn't it? In that, this manifestation will be there. First, this inability to extend the fingers with the wrist extended, isn't it? It remains extended, and this inability to extend the fingers. Fingers will remain like this, like this. See, like this one. This cannot be extended. This remains the extended, isn't it? And this position in the normal hand, this is possible in the normal hand, only when the wrist is flexed, and that the fingers can be extended, isn't it? So this is flexed and this can be extended. But here in case of this, the first fingers cannot be, this remains like this one, and this remains extended, isn't it? Then second one, sensory and the motor changes. Due to ischemia, what? The paralysis of the nerves, particularly the median nerve, isn't it? The median nerve is imposed, isn't it? This is what? The neural changes takes place. This is what? Ischemia of the median nerve, or paralysis will take place due to ischemia. Then, third group of the clinical features are there. So these clinical features are of the in the developing stage. Inability to extend the fingers, and the sensory and motor changes due to damage to the nerve or involvement of the nerve. Then in the developed stages, means ischemia occurs, the necrosis takes place, and after that healing takes place by the fibrosis. That time what changes are takes place? The first, the forearm shows wasting, means this wasting of the forearm, muscles of the forearm gets wasted, becomes small, atrophy. Wasting of the forearm is common. Second, there is a typical deformity. Typical deformity. It is a feature of what? The Walkman's ischemic contraction. This is typical deformity. This one. See in this figure. This is a typical deformity. And what deformity is that? That is the elbow is flexed. Here this figure, the elbow is not seen. Elbow is flexed. The forearm is in mid position. The elbow is flexed. Forearm in mid prone position. Isn't it? And the wrist shows the palmar flexion and ulnar deviation, and the metacarpophalangeal joints are extended. Metacarpophalangeal joints are extended and the interphalangeal joints are flexed. Do you get it there? First, see towards me. The elbow is slightly flexed. Forearm is pronated. Wrist is flexed with ulnar deviation. See, wrist is flexed where? To the palmar side. Flexed with ulnar deviation. This metaphalangeal joint, this is extended, and the interphalangeal joints are flexed. This typical deformity, it appears like a claw hand. Do you understand? This is a typical clinical feature of the Walkman's contracture. See here, this one. So here elbow is slightly flexed, which cannot seen in the figure. Then last one, there is often associated features of the ischemic nerve damage. So this associated feature is that not present always, but it may be present in this involvement of the nerves. That is what the particularly of the median nerve on the other hand, and the features of the nerve damage present earlier may disappear because nerves can regenerate. Isn't it? So these are the clinical features after the development of the Walkman's ischemic contraction. So all these are the clinical features representing the ischemic. So you have to diagnose in which stage it is under. Either it is in the ischemic stage, developing stage, or in the developer stage. Do you understand? Then the next, the treatment. The treatment of the Walkman's ischemic necrosis is usually as per the stages are there. And first in the stage of ischemia. In the stage of ischemia. In the stage of ischemia, you should diagnose the case, and to diagnose the condition at this stage should be the aim in every case. Isn't it? We should diagnose it in every case because you can prevent the contracture, deformity, isn't it? And because the most important fact that deformity can be prevented. For this, a foreign treatment should be given. Number one, any tight bandage. Any tight, is it tight? Tight bandage, plaster or external splint should be removed, and half hour should be allotted for the circulation of the forearm to return. If any tight bandage is there, that should remove. And at least half an hour should be given to return the blood supply, establish the blood supply there. Isn't it? And if pulsation doesn't return, the artery should be explored and repaired. The kinking should be corrected. If artery is kinking, that kinking should be removed. Or if pulsation does not occur, you should explore the artery and should examine and lacerated, kinking or whatever to be there. For embolization, internal fixation should be used. After this, remove the plaster or this tight bandage, we can immobilize with internal fixation. That is the best way to immobilize rather than the plaster. If the condition is not that much severe, then you can use the plaster again, replastering can be done. But don't use the tight bandage or the tight plaster there. Then active movements of the finger and shoulder should be otherwise, even if possible, of the elbow. Why is it only possible at the elbow? Because if there is supracondylar fracture, the movements at the elbow cannot be allowed there. But if the below the elbow, if there is a fracture or any injury, you can allow the minimum movements of the elbow. But mainly after immune immobilization, by either the internal fixation or by the using the plaster, you would advise the patient to perform the movements of the finger and the shoulder, because it will prevent the stiffness of the shoulder, and second, movements of the finger, it will be what improve or increase the blood circulation through the forearm, and that will cause the release of the or correction of the itching area. Then in the developing stage, these are the cases where the muscles have already been damaged, but here muscles are not damaged, they are started to damage. So that's why it can easily get corrected by these measures. But here in developed stage, muscles are already damaged, but an early diagnosis has been made of physiotherapy and the active movements of the fingers aided by the spring splints often produce the good results in these cases. In developing stage, muscle has been damaged there, but damage not far extended that much. It doesn't require usual surgery. Only after the physiotherapy and active movements of the part and using the spring splints, correction can be done there, isn't it? Because damage is not far away, the fibrosis is not expressed that much. Active movements also will be sufficient. Then in the established cases or the developed cases, there are two ways or two methods of treatment are there. One is the older method of the treatment, and second is the modern method is there. In older methods, you will see that the first one, what is there? In older method, the making the forearm bone shorter in accordance to the shortened muscles. Making the by surgery, opening the site and making the bone shorter as much as the muscles become shorter. But this is the oldest method. Nowadays this method is not commonly used. Bone has to be cut and it has reduced the length of the bone as per the length of the muscle which has been contracted. Then second, match pace muscle sliding operation. In this operation, common flexor origin from the medial epicondyle of the humerus is erased off, and the wrist and the finger joints, are extended and the immobilized this position, immobilized in this position, and the common flexor origin thus slides down and develop the new attachment lower down. Do you understand this? Max pace muscle operation. So this, the common flexor origin, it has been erased or dissected, and after that one what happens? The wrist has been extended and the fingers has been extended. So like this. After erasing or cutting out the common flexor origin at medial epicondyle, the flexor muscles, most of the flexor muscles, they arise from where? The medial epicondyle. Their origin has been dissected out, isn't it? And then this wrist is extended, what was flexed, isn't it? This was flexed, extended, and the fingers are extended. And they are immobilized in same position, isn't it? Either in the plaster or in the tight bandage, isn't it here? And then this attachment will be, this whatever muscle attachment you have been erased, they make the new attachment at the lower side, isn't it? At the humerus or the at the arm. This is also the oldest method there. The next, see, there are oldest methods are there. None of these methods or operations prove the satisfactory, since they provide the muscle power in the flexors that cannot provide the muscle power in the flexors that has been lost because of the fibrosis. Means in this method you have seen there is no correction of the fibrosis. So that's why it doesn't provide the power to the muscles which was damaged. So that's why it doesn't give a satisfactory results. So that's why these are old methods which are not performed. No amount of the physiotherapy can cause regeneration of the destroyed muscles. Then the next methods are descent methods or the recent methods. New methods, modern methods or recent methods are there. These are the first, in a milder cases, simply fibrous tissue are excised so that contraction is released and the remaining healthy muscles mass allowed to work. And these are the cases which might be benefited by max space operation as well. It means what? Open the site of the contracture, and where there is a fibrosis occurs in the muscles, that only mass of the fibrosis is removed. Not whole muscle is resected. Only fibrous tissue are removed, and the remaining muscles allowed to work, and the muscles will be restored, isn't it? So this max space operation is done there. Then second, in the commoner variety, that is in the severe cases, the fibrosis extensio, all fibrous tissue in the muscles is excised to the left behind tendons of the flexor digitorum profundus and the flexor pollicis longus, and transplanted some healthy muscles, usually wrist flexor wrist, usually the wrist flexors or the wrist flexors extensors, isn't it? In order to restore active flexion of the digits. The second method is what? Whole mass along with the muscle fibers which gets fibrous should be removed. Only tendon should be kept. And this gap in between tendon and the remaining part of the muscle should be filled up by the transplantation of the muscles, either from the flexors or the extensors are there, isn't it? So this is a recent one. Means first is simply removal of what? Small fibrous tissue. Here, removal of the fibrous tissue, the involved muscles of that portion, isn't it? And the replacement or the transplantation of the some healthy muscles are there. If small mass is there, so that can be removed, and the same muscles can be, or muscle fibers of the same muscle can be tied together, isn't it? Stitched together. But when the more gap is there, in place of that gap, the healthy muscle should be transplanted or is replaced by the transplantation of the muscles are there. So this is a recent method of the treatment, and this gives a satisfactory result. As the previous methods, we have seen old methods, doesn't give the satisfactory result, isn't it? So thus, this muscle transfer may be combined with the arthrodesis of the wrist in the optimum position. If there is an associated irreparable ischemic damage of the median nerve, if the nerve is damaged, median nerve, it should be grafted, isn't it? So this is in the Walkman's ischemic contracture. Hope you will understand, isn't it? So watch the lecture carefully and prepare yourself.